Bring forth your diadem and crown him, Lord. Crown, Lord. Come on. Crown we will crown, Lord. We will say crown. Yes, Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. I am praying that everyone is doing well tonight. Hello, hello. Let's see who we have in the house. Talk to me. I'd love to know who is here tonight. Today we're going to be talking about making sure that we deodorize. That we deodorize. It is time to deodorize. We have talked about decluttering. We have talked about depersonalizing. And tonight, we will be talking about deodorizing. So go and start your watch parties. Let's get this evening started. I'll give people a few moments to jump in. If you are here, please just make yourself known. I'd love to know who's on tonight. So just give me a shout out. Hey, Pastor Tanya. Well, I'm here. Tell me how your day has been going. Let's just have a moment where we can just embrace those that are coming in as we start. And remember, start those watch parties. Remember, sharing is caring. Those that are receiving this information also will benefit by sharing it to someone else. You don't have to do a share party, no worries. Just make sure you share it at the ends. Again, today, this is Worship and Wellness with Pastor Tanya, where we will be talking about it's time to deodorize as we're getting ready to come to the ending of another year, another calendar year, that is. There are some things that we need to kind of get rid of. You know, I have my screensaver says I have too much stuff. So we've already talked about decluttering, getting rid of some things. Hey, Patricia, good to see you this evening. Decluttering, we talked about depersonalizing, getting our emotions all bent out of shape about some things and making sure we get some things in alignment. And tonight we're going to talk about deodorizing, getting your stinking thinking cleared up. All right. Because some of us sometimes me too included, we have some serious forms of stinking thinking. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and hope and I know that it will be helpful because anytime God gives us something that's tangible that we can use, we can make it applicable to our everyday life with our spiritual walk. So let's go before God in prayer real quickly, and then we will begin right after that. All right. So, dear gracious and heavenly Father, we thank and praise your name for today, God. We thank you for another day in the land of the living. I thank you for everybody that is watching this live right now or at a later time, God. I ask that you help us to be able to deodorize, get rid of some of our stinking thinking, God. We thank you right now for a tangible, practical word that will allow us to carry it out in our everyday life as we continue to apply life applications with biblical principles. Oh God, we give you all the honor and the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so let's get into this thing. Stinking thinking. Oh my goodness. And I know many of you are still just joining in. Many of you are joining in, and I just want to make sure that I share it myself. Like, I want to make sure that people know that we're on. If you're sharing it, let me know if you're sharing it. Just say, I'm sharing it. We're gonna go live, and we're going to get into this thing talking about stinking thinking. So again, remember just to take a moment and share. All right. Let's get into this. Let's get into this. So tonight, as we're talking about stinking thinking, I started this series actually came, the 4Ds came because I shared that in real estate, when somebody is getting ready to sell their house, we talk about some of the things that you want to do before you sell a house. You want to declutter it. You want to depersonalize it. You want to get rid of all the clutter, so it's not a whole lot of extra stuff. You want to depersonalize it where people are not looking at you and your family. You want to deodorize, make sure it's smelling good, so we'll come in that they're not turned off by that. And then we'll talk about the last one at a later time. And so tonight we're talking about, again, deodorizing. And what does that mean for us to deodorize? Well, I am going to share with you what that means. So ultimately, in psychology, an attitude refers to a set of emotions, a set of beliefs and behaviors towards a particular object or a person or thing or event, right? And attitudes are often the result of experience, and more times than not, upbringing, and they can also have a powerful influence over our behavior. So while attitudes are enduring, they can also change. So in other words, while your attitudes are kind of, you're growing with certain attitudes, it can also change. So there are three components that I'd like us to kind of remember. Your cognitive component is really your thoughts and your beliefs about a subject, right? How you think about something or what you believe about something. The affect component is how that object, that person, that issue or event makes you feel. The brain has a tendency to connect a meaning to certain things, and it affects us differently. So the affect is how that object made us feel, right? And then there's the behavioral component, how your attitude influences your behavior. So those are three main components: your thoughts, how you feel about it, and then the behavior. Everything starts here. What you think about a thing, what you believe about a thing, how it affects you, and then how you carry out an action behind it. So I just want to make a note that one's experience, your attitudes generally, when you talk about experience, your attitude generally forms directly as a result of an experience. Take a minute and think about an experience that you have endured and it made you think, start thinking a particular way, whether it was something like as simple as, oh, you had a dog and you came in contact with that dog, and then that dog scared you, and now all of a sudden you don't particularly care for dogs. Or roller coaster, say, oh no, I had a bad experience. One's experience alters our attitude about how we do a thing. So good. Attitudes, especially your early on experiences. So attitudes form directly as a result of experience. They may also emerge due to direct personal experience or even just from observation. If you was walking down a particular street, and in this street you recognize that there's a lot of crime, you didn't experience the crime, but just your observation alone lets you know, no, that's that street. I'm not trying to do that. So much that you won't even drive down that street. And again, it all comes from your observation or your experience. Social factors also play into that, right? Your social roles, social norms can also have an influence on your attitudes. Social roles relate to how people are expected to behave in particular roles and contexts. It's so interesting when I talk with people and they're like, well, they're supposed to be the supervisor and they're supposed to act a particular way, or you're supposed to be a leader in the church, and you're supposed to be a Christian, and you're supposed to We hear these phrases, and it's the social roles that we fall under. We have a certain expectation. But check this out. Sometimes just because somebody is in a certain role doesn't mean that they have the ability or the qualifications to meet the expectation of that role. So what happens? We place a certain expectation on people based off of their roles. That person doesn't meet our expectation. And then all of a sudden it sends our brain, our thinking, sometimes on a tailspin, because we're trying to compute. You're supposed to be the leader. I'm supposed to be the follower. It's not working out, right? You're supposed to be the parent. I'm supposed to be the child, but somehow there's a disconnect, right? So the social roles play into that. Again, learning. Attitudes can be learned in a variety of ways, right? Think about what we call classical in psychology world. If you ever took a psychology 100 or 101 class, you talk about clinical conditioning, right? And that has a lot to do with best example I can give you is if you're looking at TV, especially at night, and you see a commercial over and over and over. After a while, you find yourself singing or humming the tune, to that particular commercial. Why? Because your brain has been conditioned to remember the tune of that commercial. You don't even have to. It clicks. That's what classical conditioning. And sometimes our attitudes that we carry out are from things that we learn, even from classical conditioning, right? So that's a psychology word, classical conditioning. I'm gonna throw one more else at you. Another form of learning is operant conditioning. Look at y'all are getting the big words today. Classical conditioning and operant conditioning can also be used to influence how one's attitude, again, we're talking about stinkin thinking, develops. So just imagine, for example, a young man who had just started smoking. Whenever he lights up a cigarette, people complain and chastise him and ask him to leave their vicinity. Well, basically, that's a negative feedback from those around him. Eventually, maybe, it causes him to develop an unfavorable opinion about smoking. That's ideally how we would like it to happen, right? And so therefore he decides to give up the habit. If this young man loves being around people, but recognizes his smoking is preventing him from doing so, operant condition says every time he lights it, it will trigger a thought in his brain. I can't do this because of the negative response. I hope I'm making sense to everybody tonight. I promise you, we're going to go somewhere with this. We're going to get good with this. All right. Just want to lay a little foundation. Also observation, right? We talked about observation. So here are 5 common signs and things that you might want to consider I'm falling into a realm of stinking thinking, and I might need to make some adjustments. Okay. 5 things I want to point out. Number one, you think people need attitude adjustments, right? Like, so consider this. Do you often find yourself having a lot of disagreements? You know, are you somebody that you constantly fall into disagreements? Every time you turn around, you disagree with this, you disagree with that. Or maybe you're not even the vocal disagreeer. Maybe you are somebody who don't outwardly argue with the person, but maybe you're the person that keeps replaying the conversation in your head, and inwardly you're arguing your point and feeling annoyed. So whether you're the vocal person or whether you're the internal person, but there's something about every time you just feel you got to have the need to just argue this thing all the time. I got it. I know what it is. This is the right point. Da, da, da. If we are regular, we might need to change the way we are looking at it. It might be a sign that you got to adjust because there may be some stinking thinking going on. All right. Y'all got that? One, if you're somebody who thinks that everybody else needs an attitude adjustment, how about this one? And be honest. If you find yourself, just pick up and work on it. There you go. Similar issues arise more than one person. Similar issues arise with more than one person. So, for example, if you're somebody who's triggered by similar circumstances, it's an indication that you probably need to self-adjust or change. And again, these issues aren't necessarily disagreements. It could just be something you walk away taking personally. For example, we create meanings. Our brain creates meanings. I said that earlier. So something happens and every time a situation happens that looks a particular way, you walk away with this mindset, oh, it's because they don't like me, or, oh, I'm not important, or we start to feel negative. Here's a thought. Life is a mirror of our thoughts. Life is a mirror of our thoughts. Remember, a mirror is something that we can look into to see. Life is a mirror of our thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes. The benefit of this mirror is that it's awesome because we are able to find clues that might be causing the issue. If you take a moment to look into that life or look into that mirror in this scenario, you might be able to see some things that's creating or causing the issue. So again, if you find yourself always dealing with similar issues with more than one person, it's the same issue every time you turn around, guess what? You might need to have an adjustment of your stinking thinking. It might a challenge at that moment. So number 3, you complain about your own life a lot. Are you that person? Oh, my life is terrible. Woe is me. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? It's getting on my nerves. I should be here. I should be there. I should be better off, right? Which actually is 3 and 4 I want to break out. You complain about your life. You feel that when you're constantly self-absorbed about your life not being great or where you feel you should be, you feel that everybody else is better off than you, and maybe you're not feeling envious, but you just feel like I am not where I should be. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you find yourself stuck there and it's making you feel miserable about your life, or you feel you're constantly absorbed with the thought that things should be differently, there may be you might want to reconsider that you have some stinking thinking going on. It doesn't mean you don't take an assessment of your life. It doesn't mean that you don't stop and have a moment where you say, okay, I kind of missed the mark here. I'm not being hard on myself, but I recognize this is where I missed it and I got to do different. I got to do better. I got to do more. Whatever it is, that's okay. But it's when you begin to sulk in your moment of where you are. It's when you find yourself constantly is being over hard on yourself because you didn't finish college, you didn't get the 6-digit job that you feel you should have, you didn't start your business. When you soak in that moment, you allow guilt to overpower you feelings of guilt and feelings of depression, and ultimately even all of these, which is what I was going to say, leads to a sense of anxiety. You have to consider maybe you need to change your stinking thinking. Okay, so let's keep moving on. Let's keep moving on. 5, the last one. What about this? If you are somebody that has a catastrophe attitude, so in other words, let's say you're fixing toast, right? And all of a sudden, you smell smoke coming from the toaster and you start freaking out. Oh my God, it's a fire. And that's in your brain. Not only do you smell it, but then you see fire, and the fire is going over your cabinets, and now it's spread across the whole house, and then the ambulance is out. I mean, the fire department is outside, and you found yourself in the hospital because you are smoked in, you done took in too much smoke. All of this is going on in your brain. Meanwhile, none of that has happened. That's a catastrophe attitude. You start to snowball and snowball and snowball. Listen, that's not healthy, okay? Maybe you're somebody that before you even go outside, you start to get stressed out because you're like, I got to go to the store. I don't want to go because, oh my God, I got to worry about COVID. And what if somebody doesn't cover their mouth? And we all going through it now, right? Like somebody coughs, everybody stops what they're doing and they look at the person that's coughing. And now if you're a person who has catastrophe attitude or mentality, you automatically start to feel sick. It went from the person who coughed across the room to oh my God, COVID is on my clothes. Now it's in my system. Now I feel sick. I got a fever. You cannot live that way. You gotta get rid of your stinking thinking. Here's the thing. Too many people so much time trying to control everything around them and getting upset when things don't go well. The only thing that we have complete control, influence over is ourselves, our thoughts and our attitudes and our beliefs. That's it. Those are the only things that we're in control of. Talk to me. What do you think about what's being said? Because we're going to go into the next part that will help our stinking thinking. Is this helpful? Is it making sense? Hey, Al, good to see you. Make sense? Is it making sense? Give me thumbs up, or give me a thumbs up, or yes, I got it. Yes, this is making sense. That's I just gave you the tangible side. So, now I'm going to kind of go into the next portion of this subject here, right? Intimacy with God. And on this portion of stinking thinking and clearing stinking thinking, I want to share 3 points. What does intimacy with God look like? What happens without it? And how do you become intimate? Who was intimate? David in the time of trouble, Hannah in the time of need, right? So let's talk about point 1. What does it look like? Let me even back up and say, why are we talking about intimacy with God? Because the more you find time to be intimate with God, you will have no choice but to clear up some of the stinking thinking that happens in our lives. So, for example, what does it look like? So I'd like for you to imagine this. Just consider this. Your spouse talks to you and say, dear, I love you. And thank you for cleaning the house. Can you please give me more hot water in my bath? Maybe pay a few more bills. Maybe produce some more gifts for me. And tell me how much you need me. Doesn't really listen for your response and then leaves. And then you hear them talking to their friends in the next room saying, I'm glad I spent quality time with my spouse. We just was intimate. I don't know about you, but you would probably be pretty devastated that your spouse found that time to be intimate. And a few of us might just have been having an immediate conversation with our spouse about why that was not a time of intimacy, let alone quality. You mean to tell me all I'm worth to you is what I do for you, right? Your spouse is talking about, yeah, I love you and thank you for cleaning the house. And can you give me some more hot water to pay my bills? And wait a minute, you don't, that's what you love me for? Yeah, that probably wouldn't go over very well, right? Well, let's translate that to our spiritual lives. Don't we do our God that way at times? Don't we come to him, tell him what we like about him, and then ask him what we desire, and then conclude our prayer and how we believe he is faithful and just to do it all? Half the time, we don't even wait for a response. Listen, intimacy breeds response. Say that. Intimacy breeds response. When one is intimate with their spouse, it generates a closeness, a oneness that makes you feel like all is well with the world, right? You forget about the problems, the bills, your haters, who don't like you, who forgot about you, the fight you had with your spouse early. You don't know. You start singing songs. It's just you. It's just me and you. Ooh, baby. Y'all know that song. Y'all know that song. You know what I'm saying? Act like you don't know what I mean. Well, listen. This same level of intimacy is the same level of intimacy that God expects of us and more. This comes through true, unadulterated time spent with God. Spent with him. Yeah, spent with God. And it should include our mind, our body, and our spirit. No distractions, no shortcomings, no shortchanging God. When we spend true time in worship with our Father, he comes to see about us. I'm telling you, worship is where we need to be in this season. Worshiping him, spending time with him, getting to love on him, not based off of anything that he can do for us, but just because of who he is. Man, I tell you, good true time spent with God will take you to another place you don't even want to come out. When we spend true time and worship with our Father, he comes to see about us and he wants to convene with us. And yes, you can receive this right in your home, right where you are. I know many people are not going out to church in the physical building, and we have become had to learn to adapt to virtual ministry and church and worship. But all you gotta do is take the time to get into the presence of God. You can do it right in your home. You don't have to wait till Sunday. You don't have to wait for the music man to start playing. You don't have to wait for the exhorter to start telling us you can do it. Come on, let's get in the presence of God. You ain't ready. Like, we don't need all that. You who's watching can be the initiator of this relationship. Exodus 33:13 says, teach me your ways so that I may know you and continue in your favor. So therefore, we must reevaluate what intimacy looks like with our Creator. We have to consider that what we're doing may just not be enough, which is what leads to us having more stinking thinking. So let's start with with defining intimacy. Okay. The dictionary says it's close relationship, quiet atmosphere, detailed knowledge, a private utterance or action, and sexual act, right? The dictionary describes it as close relationship, quiet atmosphere, detailed knowledge, a private utterance, and a sexual act, right? The Hebrew word yada is used in the Old Testament and is translated in the English as the word know or knowledge. The Hebrew word yada has a much wider sweep and meaning in the English word known. Well, you know, the English and the Hebrew, the word, they don't translate the same. But the biblical Old Testament word for knowing God means the following. To know God means, you ready for these words? To perceive God, to believe God, to perform or live, to learn, accept his claims, obey, understand, conform, see or experience, recognize, be willing. All of these things is what it means to know God. And if you happen to be somebody that might be missing some of the characters, you might want to reconsider if you are really having an intimate relationship with God. Can this be why some of our thinking becomes challenged at times? Often we hear the word intimacy, the first, we quickly think of the latter of the definition, the sexual act. Now, I know y'all know what I'm talking about. You hear intimacy, oftentimes, it relates in our brain at times for the sexual act, but not to be graphic. But to me, a sexual act without intimacy is just that. It's just a sexual act. So see, you can be intimate without even physically touching your mate. Did you realize that? Intimacy is not even, you don't have to have touch to be intimate with your mate. When two people are truly connected, there is a level that transcends in intimacy that you can experience even without physically touching them. It begins when the transformed mind of one and the spirit of another become connected. The word says if we keep our mind stayed on him, meaning God, God will keep us in perfect peace. And that's found in Isaiah 26:3. So that was point one, right? So that point one was, what does it look like? So that's kind of what it looks like, or what it can like. Now let's talk about what happens without intimacy. Well, we said it. In a physical relationship without intimacy, there becomes a disconnect with your partner. No touch, no oneness, etc. One begins to doubt the validity of the love from that spouse. If you've ever been in a relationship and you felt a disconnect, you begin to wonder, does my mate even still love me, right? One begins to believe that the spouse is no longer interested in sharing space and time with them. Maybe they may even feel that you're interested in someone else. When we are often out of fellowship with God, we don't spend time intimately with him. We're not touching the chords of God, and he might not be touching us. In fact, the enemy thrives off of this because we become weak in the faith, asking why God has forsaken us, when in fact, we lost that intimate connection we built with God to begin with. We broke it, right? We said, God, where are you? Why have you left me? No, God saying, no, why you left me? I ain't go nowhere. I'm still here. See, God cannot become intimate with us unless we avail our being, not just our get on our knees and say a quick prayer, not just what our requests are, but our whole being. He cannot, he can't be intimate with us unless we avail our whole being to his spirit, When David, in David's trouble, he created many Psalms, right? Anybody that knows those Psalms, David was the writer of Psalms, and boy, in his trouble, every time he, when his heartstrings was stressed out, David wrote some serious Psalms. And for example, through Hannah's need to bear a son, she went to the mount and spent quality time becoming intimate with God, which leads us to point number 3. So we know what it looks like. Number 2 is what it looks like without. How do you become intimate? How do you become intimate to minimize stinking things? Well, I would like to offer you 4 ways of becoming intimate with God. 1, read your word daily, right? That's where you're going to get direction and where you're going to get knowledge. If you don't know about the Bible, if you don't know, the word will give you direction. God will ask God, Lord, lead me somewhere. If you know where to begin in Psalms. Psalms is a good place to begin. Number 2, fellowship with other believers about God. This speaks to union, right? Here again, you will be able to be one with someone who understands God, who is in fellowship with God, which also makes you have a desire to continue to be in fellowship. Number 3, become connected local ministry as well as within your ministry. So that speaks to now accountability, right? If you're watching and you're somebody who's not yet connected to a church, or thinking about church, or feel like, I don't know if I should be in church. Yeah, find a ministry that speaks the true essence of the word and speaks to you where you are. Because you want to be accountable somewhere. You cannot grow if you're not planted, right? A plant can't grow if it's just sitting outside of water and it's not getting the dirt that it needs. We need that. That's the accountability piece. And if you're already connected to a ministry, make sure you connect to a ministry within your ministry. All of that speaks to accountability. And number 4, pray daily. That speaks to intimacy. These are 4 points to how you can become intimate. So again, today we have talked about deodorizing, getting rid of our stinking thinking. And it's imperative because as we are moving forward into a new calendar year, we want to make sure that we clean some things up. So we talked about what it is to declutter. We talked about what it is to depersonalize. And tonight we talked about deodorizing, getting rid of our stinking thinking. If you joined me a little later today, go back and watch the beginning. If you've been with me the whole time, I'm so happy that you were able to join. Please share this message on your Facebook page. Thank you, Pastor Arlene. Share this on your Facebook page. Remember, what we get is good for somebody else too. We have to be our brother's keeper and make sure that they're getting tangible, relatable, practical steps as we walk with good principles. I'm Pastor Tanya, Fresh Start Church, the wellness pastor, and you have been a part of Worship in Wellness, where we believe in biblical principles with practical steps. I love you all. God bless. Have a wonderful holiday, and we'll be back next Monday. You don't want to miss next Monday. It's the last Monday of the year. I look forward to seeing you. We're going to talk about the last D. So if you want to know what it is, you got to come back. I look forward to seeing you all. God bless and good night.